Every single conditioned belief in your head, you're constantly breaking in the gym. And I had to tell myself, why am I not breaking that in my relationship? Why am I fighting for all these things outside of that and not in this relationship itself for myself, when this is my future I'm fighting for, and my health and my happiness? So I just remember kind of a breaking point within the relationship itself, when it was the time where it's the decision where you can fight or you can decide to take back your power. And again, I broke it many times where I didn't take my power back, because it feels like a drug. It's addicting. I felt like I could not live without it.
Let's link up with Krysta on The Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
Fix listeners, welcome back to our latest episode of the Fix podcast. I'm your host, Krysta Huber, and I could not be more excited to introduce today's guest, Katrina McKenna, who you may know a little bit better by her now infamous Instagram handle, College Clean Eating. When I reflect on the conversation that we had today, I also took a little bit of time to think back on my own fitness journey and my own journey as somebody who's just a consumer of fitness content. And Katrina was one of those early people who I really feel like created a name for the idea that women do not need to shrink themselves physically, but as you'll hear in this conversation, mentally, emotionally, showing up as your authentic selves too. But I think back to when I first started following fitness accounts, and she was definitely somebody who began to change the narrative that I am happy to see is getting stronger today around this idea that women should focus on being strong, should focus on being physically strong, should focus on being mentally strong, celebrating themselves for having a strong physique, and being able to be somebody who was navigating wanting to prioritize her health, wanting to change the shape of my own body. I always struggled with not necessarily seeing other people whose bodies emulated mine. And I really see Katrina as somebody who changed that narrative for me personally. And even in talking with my own team and sharing with them that we were doing this recording today, a lot of them said the same thing. So this is an episode where we cover a whole lot in a short amount of time. We talk about her journey through pregnancy. Katrina shares a ton of knowledge around core work and how to really think about strength training as you go through this beautiful phase of your life where you're literally growing another human. But we also talk about how it's allowed her to grow her community in a way that she just never imagined, as somebody who started her account focused on food and really focused on just sharing tips and tricks on how to eat healthy on a budget in college with restrictions on space and equipment and supplies and everything that comes with that. And just now having created this entire platform around her brand, Sculpt You, it was truly an honor to be able to sit down with her and have this conversation and get to connect with her one-on-one as somebody who's watched everything evolve for her over these last few years. But I'm also really excited to continue to witness what her platform speaks to as she navigates her next phase of life as a mom. And I think that's just something that's so cool about social media. You'll hear us talk through in this episode the idea that human interaction and the importance of social interaction has obviously shifted so much with technology, but something that I think is incredible about technology in using social media in a vulnerable way, in an authentic way, as she 100% does, is you get to go along this journey with people and really bring them into your world and feel like you're a part of their lives, and being able to sit down for a podcast for 40, 45 minutes with somebody and just really get the chance to hear from her perspective, what she expected, what she didn't expect, and what this whole ride has been like was just really special. And for all of our female listeners out there, no matter what stage of life you're in, if you're in the phase where You're feeling like everyone's kind of doing something different. I know that's where I stand as I think about entering my 30s and people being in relationships, marriages, having kids versus the transition of like, are you still going out and maybe socializing a little bit more and what all of that looks like? We get into all of that and so much more inside of this episode, but it really comes down to one central focus of, as Katrina so well says, remembering that nobody is you and that is your power. And just remembering how unique you are and recognizing that it's so important to own that. So this is a feel-good episode, a very educational one, and I'm excited to hear everybody's feedback on it. If you are interested in checking out Sculpt You and their programming and educational content around fitness and nutrition, all that is linked for you guys down in the show notes. Be sure to follow Katrina. She's also very entertaining on Instagram. I learned through this episode that she grew up as a theater kid. So all of that makes perfect sense to me now too. But with that, let's welcome Katrina McKenna to the FYX podcast. Katrina, welcome to the FYX podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation. Just seriously honored to get the chance to connect with you and meet you and hear more of your story directly from you after having watched you grow on social media over the last few years. So first and foremost, thank you so much for being here. I like to kick things off on the show on a light note. I am a big coffee drinker and it looks like you're sipping on something over there. I know that you're pregnant, so maybe your caffeine intake has changed a little bit over the last few months, but I always ask all of my guests to get started, what is your go-to coffee order?
Oh, my go-to coffee order. That's a good one. I actually have limited caffeine consumption this whole pregnancy because it just brings me anxiety in general.
Yeah.
But right now I'm actually sipping on electrolytes. So that's what I'm doing. We're staying hydrated out here.
Okay. Nice.
But my go-to coffee order, I actually do it black with honey. That's so weird, is it?
Oh, I have never, you're a first. That is a first in my 150 plus episodes. What got you into adding honey to it?
I have such an obsession with honey, like bad obsession. I add it to every single thing I possibly can. I love honey and I just love black coffee. I worked in the meat industry in a factory where I worked like 12-hour shifts from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay.
Got obsessed with coffee. Oh, should I close my window?
Oh, no, you're good.
You hear that? Okay.
No, yeah.
And yeah, then it just started the coffee love and then putting the honey in there. I have no idea. And I put a little cinnamon in sometimes.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, being in the fitness and wellness space and interviewing lots of people in this world too, most of the time it's some version of a black coffee and nothing like too adventurous outside of that. But you are definitely my first with the honey. So that's cool.
I will say I'm more of a hot chocolate gal than a coffee gal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, that's good for the sweet tooth.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That I always have 24/7. So
well, cool. Well, I'm excited to dive in. And I like to, when I have a guest on the show, I like to, have you talk about who you are, what you do, who you support. All of those things are great, of course. But I like to take that in a slightly different direction to like really get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. And
Ooh.
instead of giving us your resume line of like, here's my elevator pitch on who I am.
Want my LinkedIn?
Yes, not your LinkedIn. I want to know who you are to your core. Like, why should people care about what you have to say? Why should they listen to the rest of this podcast today?
I absolutely love this question so much. So, and this is one I'm constantly re-answering, I feel like, especially heading into pregnancy and heading into about to be a mom. So it's kind of always coming back to this question. But I was a girl, I've always been so in love with fitness and health, but I was a girl who didn't grow up with not many friends. I always was struggling and fighting to want to be enough, always begging to be enough, always begging to fit in. And it just led me into this journey, especially in my 20s, of wanting women to see the magic in who they are, because that's been the majority of my life, is struggling and trying to find the magic in who I am, especially in a social media based world.
Oh my
and
gosh,
seeing
yeah.
the power, and seeing the power of who I am in general. And fitness and health has played such a beautiful part in that, in rediscovering my own light. And that's been my source of just energy and impact and power, what I want to bring to this space and why I do what I do always is really trying to connect with those women and bring those community in and have them see their worth and see their power and see that they're enough. So that is at the core what drives me. I always think that little girl. I always think, and then there's so many other pieces of myself that I'm always trying to put together. I've had a history of post-concussion syndrome, IBS, interstitial cystitis. So I've been on the journey with the health side that's led me into, really in the wellness and fitness field, why I love it so much. But that's really at the core, I think, is just having people see their magic. I just live for it and seeing the power in who they are.
I think that's so beautiful. And I want to take this angle of like you kind of thinking through like where you were versus where you are now, because somebody goes to your Instagram and looks at the creativity that you put behind, like I think, isn't your latest challenge video something to do with like SpongeBob, right?
Yeah. I was just laughing. I was like, oh no. Every time someone's like, I checked out your Instagram, I was like, yes. I'm so sorry.
Like how, but to hear, I think it's so powerful to hear you say that, hey, I was this young girl who felt like she didn't have friends and maybe couldn't figure out who she was. And now look at the platform that you've built off that, to the point where not knowing anything about you, right?
Yeah.
For somebody observing what you do for the very first time, I see this extremely confident person who's very much in touch with herself and really in touch with her creative side. One of the reasons I was like so excited to get to have this conversation with you is because I think that something that is not as common in the fitness space is the element of, being funny and adding that like little bit of hilarity that definitely makes you unique and stand out. So I got to know, have you always been creative in that way? Or is this something that's kind of grown for you over time, over building this platform and building your brand?
I will say I was a theater kid.
Okay.
So
you fully commit to the bit.
I will say I was a theater kid, always into plays, always my personality, since I was beginning, and my parents like this too, has been a little more inappropriate, I guess you would say, when it comes to my jokes, a little more risque.
We're here for it. I love it.
Yeah. And I struggled within that to find my people, to find my community, and to find people I connected with. And I would say it took me a long time. I started social media in 2014 as a college student. I just was posting meals because that time Instagram, there wasn't really, it wasn't like a business or anything like that. You were just posting for fun. And it was like, my high school, it was just people from high school. And I was like, I don't want to, bother them. I felt really uncomfortable to just be posting all this fitness stuff. So I was like, I'm going to do it for myself. It was just a journal. And then I kept posting, and it took me a while to actually really open up and get past the fear of other people's opinions, just in my life in general. And once I hit that really in college, I was really allowing myself to just fully, because you really understand there's so many other people out there struggling with the same thing. You connect with so many people, and as well as the impact you can make. But yeah, my name needs to change, College Needing. That's how I started, and I'm changing it I think next week actually. But it's been a really big the transformation I've gone through on that page, and just how I've been able to just fully open up and share more of myself has been, and it really, what powers me for that is knowing other women struggle to do the same, and I want to help them in that way, and be that light for them. So that's the goal.
I love that. And let's kind of go back to those first days of posting recipes. You touched on a few different parts of your health journey and different challenges that you've experienced along the way and how you've grown. What initially prompted that for you to be like, hey, I'm going to start posting recipes? Like, I know when I think back to college, and I hear this a lot from the clients that I work with too, the crazy part about food is you have to eat, but no one ever really teaches you how. Somebody just puts food in front of you and you eat it, right? And then you go off and you go to school. And even if your parents had the education around food, had the best intentions, it's like now you're out here on your own, navigating this new phase of life and really figuring out how to be an adult. And I think there's a lot of women that can relate to the fact that like college was very eye-opening in figuring out how little we actually know about what we're eating, even if we want to take care of ourselves and be healthy and move our bodies and everything that comes with it.
100%. So actually I've always had a big interest in nutrition and food from an early age. I ran like a healthy eating camp. I was a Girl Scout in my Girl
Cool.
Scouts for high school. So that definitely helped me. But in college in general, I was diagnosed with interstitial cystitis and post-concussion syndrome. I was homeschooled in high school for. So I had a lot of health conditions that kind of led me to the path of being like, how can I really be the healthiest version of myself? And like you said,
Mhm.
college is such a hard time because you're already going through so
So
much when it
much.
comes to figuring out what you want to do in your life, who you want to connect with, who you want to be. You're discovering all those things, and you don't have the tools really for figuring out how to nourish your body from a nutritional standpoint and a mental standpoint with going through all of those things. So my goal with posting my recipes, I just loved cooking and I loved coming up with stuff. Number one, the affordability aspect, and to actually create food or make food in college and live. I was living in a dorm room with just a microwave at the time.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. So I was like, let me just put my stuff out there. Maybe it'll help other people. Maybe I can connect with other people. That was my main goal, is just to, hey, this is how I'm creating affordable, healthy recipes in college, because I was trying to help heal my current, whether it was gut issues, all the issues I was going with, and eat healthy and affordably in college. So that's where I really started. The pictures are horrendous. I am like, I had a George Foreman grill in my dorm room, and I was like a frozen chicken breast because we had like a fridge in the middle of the dorm, and I would like stamp it, put on a plate with like 2 pieces of spinach. It's so bad. I don't even know. I mean, if you go look back at those pictures, you're like, dude, I don't know what you were posting. It was horrendous. Um, but I was out there posting it, so.
Yeah. Hey, like, I think that's a good message for anybody if you're listening to this thinking about wanting to start something and having a
Oh, for
passion,
sure.
right? Like, just go for it.
Oh yeah.
Forget that all the like ways that, like, obviously, like, not using filters on Instagram has changed like so much about it, the emphasis on video, right? But like, what you can do with your iPhone now and the quality of the camera wasn't even possible not
Oh
even
no.
10 years ago, which is so crazy to think about how
Yeah.
fast that technology has sped up. But I also think it's actually an important reminder, for as much as we can sit here and laugh about it and be like frozen chicken, George Foreman grill, it's a really, really important reminder that when you care about something, you will do whatever you can to make it work. Right.
100%.
And I think
100%.
sometimes that gets lost for people. I see this a lot with nutrition, especially with women, moms, especially, because they feel pulled in so many different directions to try to be everything to everybody, that
Yes.
we lose sight of some of those basics sometimes and feel the sense of like guilt or shame associated with wanting to make the time to prioritize you. But again, for as much as we can kind of joke about that example, it does remind you that, like, hey, we can keep this simple and still help you have that like little sliver of time or whatever kind of approach you might be taking to still be able to prioritize yourself and your health.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel a lot of stress to go all in way too deep and way too fast. And
Mhm.
it's just not sustainable, especially because you're always going to fall off. You're always going to fall off the whatever path you're on, whether it's, oh my gosh, I got pregnant, like your life changes so quickly, or in college, you have a huge test coming up, you have to prioritize that. And it's just discovering those little tiny habits you can bring in. And even with, starting something and posting about something you're passionate about, it really helped me stick to those habits because it was so fun to fight for
That's
myself
cool.
and show up for myself and see other people doing it as well. And you build a small little community there. And I think when you forget about who's watching and followers and all of those stuff kind of connected, that's where like the magic really happens. But yeah, it's just bringing in those micro habits, and it's life changing for sure.
And at what point did you start to transition more of your focus around training too? Because obviously that's a massive
Yes.
component of what you are coaching people through and supporting them with today.
100%. So when I started the account, I was absolutely horrified of the weight room actually. Like I would go to the weight in the gym, there's always like, the treadmills and you see the
Yep.
weights, and I would just look across from it like it was across the sea. And I remember seeing girls hip thrusting and doing all this squatting, and it was so badass, but I was so petrified. So when I started, I wasn't really into it. And actually one of the big things that transformed my whole page fitness journey, all that, was going through a breakup for myself, because I remember especially in college, it was the high school sweetheart breakup. You're sitting
Mhm.
there. I remember looking in the mirror and I just said to myself, I want to be strong. And I'll forever remember this moment in my life. And I remember I went to the little apartment gym that I had at that point, because I was out of my dorm now. and went to my little apartment gym, just did little weights. And then I finally found the courage about a year later, after I busted my ass in the Smith machine. I mean, fell back in front of a new crush I had. That was horrendous.
Oh gosh.
Busted my ass in the machine. And that's when I started really getting into weight training. It really propelled me, because not only did I want to be mentally strong, healthy when it comes to the food I wasn't taking, but the physical aspect to me was life changing when it came to weight training, because I would look at those weights and imagine it to be, whether it's something someone said to me or an obstacle in my life. And you always tell yourself, I can't. Well, in the weight room, you look at the weights and you start to say, I can. You start to see you're stronger than you ever imagined. So it's so crazy how much the weight room translated to every single part of my life, and how much it sounds so cliche and so silly, but it's so true. It's so true. And that was part of the spark of that and transformative part of that journey for me with when it comes to weight training.
And to weave it back into what you shared at the very beginning of this, and just talking about helping people find their magic inside of them and really, get in touch with yourself. As you think back on, those relationship changes and breakups and transitions through life, how has that then influenced a lot of the content and messaging that you're sharing? I know in the last year, with you documenting your relationship with your now husband, I've seen
Yeah.
some really cool posts from you just about the growth that you went through on that side of things. But just expand for us a little bit more on what you mean by how the fitness aspect and this desire to get strong then showed up inside of how you carry yourself in all of your relationships.
Oh, 1,000,000%. So I think, and especially when I started weight training, and this answer is so multifaceted, because I'm sure when you started weight training as well, there was such a pressure to be the smallest version of yourself and to
Yes.
shrink.
Mhm.
And obviously that played a role with how you felt, whether it was a man would admire you or want you and all that way. You felt you had to look a certain way to be to be admired or to be wanted. And in that period of my life, in college especially, I was going through just so many different toxic relationships, just begging to be chosen by people I should not have been begging for, because I just wanted to prove that I was good enough. I just wanted to prove that I could be chosen.
In being at that point in your life of realizing so many relationships you were in was you trying to find a way to prove that you were good enough, at what point did a shift happen for you in you recognizing hey, I don't know how you thought about it, but maybe looking at it from the place of I know what I have to offer, and I know that the right person will see me for that versus me trying to prove myself. How do you feel like fitness and nutrition and taking care of yourself and making you and your relationship with you that top priority? How do you think that translated next into what is now your, partner and everything?
Oh, this is such a good question. I think it's such an important question also, because it's something that I see so many, and unfortunately, women get stuck in this pattern with fighting to always prove themselves. And I think the gym, and with the whole journey with the gym, with striving to be the strongest version of yourself and really proving to yourself you can, it started to prove to myself, because you get in this state when you're in toxic relationship cycles, when you're constantly begging to be chosen, it feels like a drug. You become addicted to it, and you truly
Yeah.
feel like you cannot break out of it. I mean, it took me 5 years of constant off and on breakups. I mean, getting back together, constantly begging, thinking I was going to change, to really sitting there and saying, okay, I'm fighting for myself in all these different aspects of my life. Is this the kind of love I want to show my future family? Is this kind of love I want to show myself? Is this, if I had a daughter one day, is what I want to say, hey, this is the kind of love for you, where you're sitting there and you're constantly not feeling worthy or good enough? Is this what you want to do, is to be begging for someone to see your worth? And those questions kept showing up, especially as, and the gym played such a vital role in that, because every single day you have to show up and tell yourself you can, and you can break every single conditioned belief in your head. You're constantly breaking in the gym. And I had to tell myself, why am I not breaking that in my relationship? Why am I fighting for all these things outside of that and not in this relationship itself for myself, when this is my future I'm fighting for, and my health and my happiness? So I just remember kind of a breaking point within the relationship itself, when it was the time where it's the decision where you can fight or you can decide to take back your power. And again, I broke it many times where I didn't take my power back because it feels like a drug. It's addicting. I felt like I could not live without it. And it gets to that point where you find your strength in every single aspect outside. You want to be the healthiest you can and the strongest you can. And you know that you would rather be, it hurts more to fight for someone not choosing you than it does to be alone by far. And I think
100%.
I was terrified of that, of the aspect of being alone and not realizing that I would take being alone a million times over than fighting for someone begging to choose or begging for someone to choose me. So that's where I hit that breaking point. And it translated and it helped save me so much in going through the breakup as well and not continuing the pattern, and not breaking that boundary I set for myself where I said I will never reach out and I will never continue this pattern again because it's tough. It is tough and it was broken many times, to really set that final boundary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what you said about it being this addicting cycle is so true. And that could even go on like beyond romantic relationships, like
Oh yeah.
friendships, professional relationships. And going back to my point earlier of just saying like there's so many women out there who want to be everything to everybody. One thing that I think is really powerful that I feel like your message really speaks to and aligns with as well of something that we focus on inside of the Fitness Fix is like all of the skills that you have that allow you to be this amazing mom, daughter, sister, employee, like insert whatever hat you're wearing and role you're playing. Those are the same skills that you can translate to your health and fitness that will make you even better at all of those
100%.
things too.
That's so powerful. I love that. It's a huge shift.
And let's go back to your point about thinking about this from the lens of your future family, because now you're getting to that point. So, what has it been like for you to really take people on this journey of going back to the George Foreman chicken in your dorm room to now talking through pregnancy? I mean, this is like a whole topic that we could unpack for sure. But what I can just say is I really love how you've given and continued to give a voice to the importance of strength training through
Yeah.
this period of your life, because I just think we can't shut up about it enough. It's just so important.
I can't shut up about it. No.
Yeah.
It has been such a wild journey of sharing that George Foreman picture to posting about pregnancy, because I'm telling you, I really did not think I was going to be able to break out of those patterns, and I really didn't think that I would be here where I am today. But those questions were so transformative to me, to really thinking about that. It's crazy that I'm here now building that, thinking about that future family and my kids coming into play, and just what I wanted for myself in my life and what I wanted my love story and fairy tale to be, honestly,
Yeah.
was really important, because I was like, why am I short? Why am I getting myself this short, whatever they say, shorthand on the stick.
Yeah.
But speaking on weight training with pregnancy, and I've just absolutely fallen in love with that. It's been so transformative for me in general in my pregnancy, but it's so important. And unfortunately, when you get pregnant, number one, it's so isolating. It's so lonely, because yes, you're really excited, but then all of a sudden you get handed with, hey, these are everything you cannot do. This is all the things you can't do. You
Right.
get hit with tons of things. And then you sit there like, okay, well, what can I do? And you're not really taught how to nourish and support yourself at all during pregnancy, and how to stay strong and how to stay comfortable during pregnancy itself. And exercise is so beneficial, so many benefits, not only just for your own prenatal comfort, but just for postpartum recovery, for better birth outcomes. They're even
Mhm.
seeing so much research with the placental function in general during pregnancy, weight training during pregnancy, hypertension, preeclampsia, as well as just they're even seeing better birth rates and babies being able to gain weight better after birth. So it's so much research is coming out, and it's just really powerful. And I'm excited for the shift in industry. And I want to be one of those voices, because again, you get pregnant and then you're like, oh my God, I can't move a muscle. I'm
Right.
terrified. And you're
Yeah.
terrified. Just, yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be treated like you're this glass house. You are bringing life
Exactly.
into the world, which is like the most incredible ability that we have as women. And I'd love for you to just share a little bit about what you've built into your program and your app and everything that really supports
Yeah.
people through that aspect too.
Oh, so I've fallen in love with prenatal training again. We've spoken about how it's so important, number one, exercise for prenatal comfort, but a lot of pregnancy programs neglect, especially the biggest myth is you can't train abs. The biggest myth is like, hey, I mean, there's so many myths and misconceptions.
But that's a
in
big
terms of
one. Yeah.
That's a big one is, hey, you can't train core. And yes, the concern of that is diastasis recti, and which is just the normal separation of your abdominal wall during pregnancy. Everyone's going to have it. We want to really minimize it though, and really help support postpartum recovery there. So yes, we're going to make some modifications when it comes to abdominal work, but it's so important to support our abdominals because number one, it supports baby's positioning. So when you have that stronger abdominal wall, we're not having that, our uterus and our belly hang forward, which can really help that baby descend. If our uterus and our belly hangs forward, we don't have that strong abdominals, our baby is not going to be able to descend in the pelvis as well. So we really want to make sure that's really important, as well as, again, it's going to support that lower back pain, which is a real thing during pregnancy, pelvic girdle, all aspects of the form. Oh, we're going into all the aspects of that was just I went off on that myth. But the programming itself is really built for that. So we really incorporate tons of core movement. We really focus on internal rotation work, as in a lot of programs focus on external rotation work,
Right.
which it's typically our normal stance during pregnancy. We want to be in external rotation. That's great for opening the top of the pelvis, but we really want to focus on internal rotation for opening the bottom of the pelvis and the pelvic outlet. So we focus on that. We focus on myofascial sling work. You have tons of fascia and slings across your body that help support that pelvic girdle, and that's really not focused on because, again, we're not focused on the biggest issue is we don't focus on strengthening during pregnancy because we feel we're treated like a glass house. So it really helps support all those things: pelvic girdle pain, pubic symphysis pain, and then we really bring in just pelvic floor relaxation, which is so huge because I think the biggest thing I'm sure you've seen is like, just do your Kegels during pregnancy and that's it. And yes, pelvic floor strengthening plays an important role, and that's important in the beginning of pregnancy. But we really want to imagine you're pushing a baby out and you're just pushing up against a wall. And we don't
Yeah.
want to, we want to release that pelvic floor and let that relax. So pelvic floor relaxation is really, really important. So we bring in all these aspects in our training in general, and just what I promote and talk about. It's just so important because you don't see it and you just hear all these things that you can't train heavy, you can't lift over 25 pounds, which if anyone, I have a big ass Mancoon cat. So it's like, what do you mean? And then again, you can't train. Well, another one is you can't run, and that's outside. There's tons of different things people say when it comes to pregnancy, and everyone is so individual in their own training. But the biggest thing is just you feel empowered and nourished within your body, and you're so much stronger than you could ever think. And that's just the biggest thing with pregnancy is seeing that. And I've loved prenatal training so far.
What was the biggest surprise for you in navigating training throughout pregnancy? Anything that you just like really didn't expect?
That's a really good question. I would say, well, the fatigue for sure. Just the fatigue and the amount of exertion you can do. I would say the pelvic girdle pain is real. I mean, just the little aches and pains. Just, I would say, not so much. I would say, honestly, the biggest things, the pregnancy space in general and fitness space is very scary, very negative, and very
Like fear
isolating. Like I
mongering?
said, exactly. And I think I had so much fear about what I can do, what I can be capable of, the body shifts and the body changes. There's so much negativity. I think diet culture plays such a big role,
For
unfortunately,
sure.
in the pregnancy space, which is really sad because it's the most magical time. Like your body's
Right.
starting to grow and shift and change. And I think everything you heard about pregnancy, in my opinion, now entering into it, has been such a different, like, for example, all the stuff about stretch marks and everything when it comes to your body shifting. You could do every single thing in the book and it's still going to freaking happen. It's still going to freaking happen because your body's shifting and growing, and it's meant to. And I think we are looked at as these, especially postpartum, as, hey, pregnant women, don't change, basically stay the same as possible you can, stay as small as you can, which is crazy. And then postpartum also, let's make sure you get hot as hell real
As
quick,
fast as
as
possible.
fast as possible. Let's make sure, like, and that's been, I feel like, the focus on during pregnancy, instead of just the nourishment from a nutritional standpoint, which our needs are crazy high. But apparently the what media wants to tell us is that we need to restrict. And when it comes to movement, is just take it slow. You're not as strong as you think you are. And like, I love that scenario. I love how you just said, like, they put us in a glass house, um, which is like the strongest, most magical thing I'm going through. Like, why do I have to shrink myself in any way?
Yeah. And I think it's amazing that you have this opportunity to be able to talk about it and influence so many other people and getting them to see this other perspective from you actually experiencing that firsthand too. So to kind of take it into the postpartum perspective, because I know we're coming up on our time here, I'd love to know, what are you most excited about with now becoming a mom in the aspect of and you could take this a million ways, right? Like how
Yeah.
it's going to influence the next phase of your business, what this next chapter of your life is going to look like. Like, what are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I think pregnancy itself, honestly, has been so transformative and such a shift for me for really finding peace and love within my body. Because so many
Cool.
women, again, when you grow up in a stage where you're meant to restrict, and then you go through pregnancy where you are meant to grow, is so beautiful and transformative for me itself, and finding the power just in with all my body can do and finding peace in that and slowing down. And I would say postpartum, and pregnancy itself, I've really enjoyed slowing down and connecting with my body and training. But I would say discovering this new version of myself and discovering who I am as a mom, and especially in business, with my business itself, I would say how I can impact. I just feel like I can connect with so many more people, which has been so beautiful. It's given me such a deeper appreciation for women. And I've already loved the hell out of women. And now it's been like every woman I've seen that has gone through pregnancy. And I feel like once I go through birth, and just, I feel like it's just another layer of feeling so much more connected to a
Yeah.
woman itself. And it's just such a powerful thing. So I'm really excited to see kind of the next level of who I am, because obviously I'm going to have to strip parts of me and rebuild new parts of me, and rediscover my love for training also, which is beautiful, because I feel like during pregnancy itself, you have to slow down. You do slow
Sure.
down in some ways, and your training shifts because you are training for pregnancy, and that's important. And so you're kind of taking the goal of, I want to train for a big old fat ass. Your goals shift. Your
Right.
goals shift. And it's been amazing because you're training for your health and yourself. And I think that's the number one thing that also drives me in training itself, to actually stick with it. Because if you're sticking
Sure.
with, like I always say, if you're just like, hey, I want to build a fat ass, okay, you get to a big ass, then what's
Then
next?
what?
I mean, what's
Right.
pushing you? What's next? So it's like, what is that core thing that's going to keep you in the gym and keep you fighting for your health? So it's really instilled that, and I'm excited to instill that postpartum, I said, which is probably true. I've heard that. I've heard the gas myth, but but instilling that, because I'm not only just fighting for myself, now I'll be fighting for my future kids and my family, and showing them, how to fight for themselves, which I'm probably most excited about, actually, is to
Yeah.
teach that
To
to
set
them.
that example.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I think that's beautiful. And I really love what you said about just continuing to build that connection with women, because I've always been in this unique situation just in the way my own fitness career evolved. I first started working in a gym that the audience and like the clientele was specifically focused on moms. And
Oh,
I am not yet a mom and was only
yeah.
22, 23 at the time. So I got this really cool front row seat to hearing them navigate so many aspects of motherhood, and have continued to be able to do that with the clientele that we support. And now seeing my own family members, my sister-in-law and brother, like I mentioned to you before we hit record, just had a baby. It's like really cool to be able to see it and just hear it from so many different perspectives, and like have a like future understanding of like, there's so much to just experience yourself, but also be like, hey, like I really kind of like get it. Like I get when people say my time doesn't feel like it's my own. Even your comments about like the pregnancy brain, right? Like all of it is so real, but it's one thing to hear about it from other people and another to actually experience it yourself.
1,000,000%. It's just like meeting someone in all my friendships, when someone has gone through, whether it's a toxic relationship or something similar, and you just feel so much more connected. You just feel so much more, wow, I'm not alone here. Like
Mm-hmm.
and the crazy thing is, pregnancy does feel very lonely, and even though millions of women go through it, because you're going through so many changes. So I'm excited to be able to just connect with more women on those things, all the changes. Even like my areola is getting huge.
Yeah,
I
you're
could
so
not
open. Like, I think that's
I
so
could not
important.
believe how big these things get. I was like, what? And then of course when you post about it, then everyone's like, oh, yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I knew the reasons why, but
Right.
it's still like, oh, okay, like this is something everyone is going through. And it's just power and community is so amazing. But that's been huge for me. I'm excited about that, as well as it's feel like a deeper connection with my mom and my grandmother, honestly, to see like, oh, like you it's really pregnancy is a sacrifice. So it's
Yeah.
like you really went through all this for me. And it's beautiful to just to find that love. But yeah, I love that. I love that's a really amazing journey for yourself. That's a really cool place to start, honestly.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. And I'm not even in a serious relationship at this time. So I have no idea when that will be a part of my future.
Yeah.
But I do feel really grateful because I have so many women around me that even in navigating my personal relationships over the last few years, like that have given me a lot of perspective around what I want out of my life, what I want in a partner. And I'm very grateful for that. Like, I'm sure you feel the same way with your community, but I tell my clients all the time, for as much as I'm here holding a space for them, I feel that they do the same for me. And I don't think that a lot of people who have your typical corporate kind of job can, as someone who has had one, can say that they get the opportunity to have those kinds of connections with people. So I never take that for granted.
Exactly. 100%. No, the work from home culture can be very isolating.
Yeah, it can.
And
And that's
making friends as an adult already sucks. It's already
right.
hard.
I was
Finding
about to
community
say
already
that.
sucks. Yeah, it's already the worst thing ever. It's like they don't teach you that in college. You should have told me, hey, by the way, when you leave this, you're screwed. It's
No,
like
it's so true.
you have a hard time meeting people. So good luck out there.
Yeah. And you know, the human connection is so important. There's so much research coming out now that, especially in the last few years since the pandemic and how like social interactions changed in that time, the same way that sitting was the new smoking, the thing I'm hearing so much recently is that loneliness is the new smoking. And it
Oh,
makes sense. It's
100%.
unfortunate, but like we were not designed to not have that this interaction with other people.
100%. And I think a lot of that, we feel like we're getting that fulfillment from online interactions, and it's just not the same. And even
Right.
in-person interactions can feel different when there's a phone out. There's research
100%.
showing that even if there's one on the table, or if I glance it a little bit, that connection is diminished a little bit. So it's really tough. And it's really tough to meet people who can meet you where you're at and are
Mhm.
going where you're at. And I think especially in this stage in late 20s, when you're transitioning from partying and drinking,
Yep.
and other people are transitioning to families, and I have friends who are not even in that stage at all. It's just a hard shift right now, because to find people who align with your passions and where you're going, but also want to better themselves and are focused on all of those things. And unfortunately, a lot of people I meet that are connected with those I meet online that don't live near me. So
Yeah.
it's like, but you
Yeah.
want to just have a night where you're on the couch with your girls, but
Mhm.
it's tough to find that
Oh
community.
my God.
It's
Yeah. I feel that
yeah.
in my core because some of my closest friends like are my internet friends that I talk
Yep.
to them every single day, and I love the bond that we've been able to create through technology. Like I'll never take that aspect away from it, but absolutely, like there's sometimes that I'm just like I wish you were closer because
Yeah. You
it
want to
makes a
call them over and be
difference.
like, let's order
Yeah.
pizza and watch Love
Right.
Island right now. And you just
Yeah.
cannot. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's tough. I miss that aspect of college. And I think that's something that what isn't talked about in any way. And how to really, because then it's like, then you're busy, and then you're the friends I have in person, it's like, hey, can you hang out 1 month from now? And
Right.
it's
And like
like,
put it on the
okay.
calendar.
Yeah, can we put on the calendar? I'll send you a Google invite. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, so how do you really build a deep friendship if you're not
Mhm.
in college? You're seeing them every day in class or a roommate. So, or in high school, how do you build that? That's the toughest issue. Toughest thing I'm currently dealing with as well. It's a struggle.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that because that's something that I've spent a lot of time this year really thinking through as someone who transitioned from having her fitness career in person, training, teaching
Yeah.
classes, to then taking my business online and trying to navigate that aspect has definitely been a big change on top of the season of life that I'm in, where there are people who are, you know, entering marriages, buying houses, having kids, or the complete opposite. And none of it is wrong or better or you should be
Exactly.
done on this specific timeline. But I think hearing more people talking about that, it just reminds you that a lot of people are experiencing these things too. And again, like we've been saying about pregnancy, like we've been saying about nutrition and prioritizing yourself and taking care of your health, like so much of this is just being open and honest about what you're actually going through, because there are other people who feel afraid or alone or different for feeling that way. And then when you find out that you're not, there's so much power in that.
So much power in that. I think, especially because we see so much of large groups of women online, or we see so much of people hanging out all the time on social media, there's shame when it comes to not having a large group of friends in person. And that's I just feel like I even feel that sometimes of like, oh, wow, like I wish I had that, or why don't I have that? Why haven't I built this at this point? And there's been periods in my life where you have,
Sure.
and then it falls apart. Like you said, like everything starts shifting. So I think it's just a lesson I'm always going to have to making, and being honest and open with that, and being able to put myself out there to rebuild that community. And it's hard though, when, and I'm sure in your stage too, when you're out there dating, when you're out there trying to build other things. And when I'm trying to build a relationship with my husband and myself, it's like, whoo, like we can only do so much out here.
Yeah, exactly. And finding people who relate, right? On certain things. Like it's very it's to us, it's not unusual to run a business online, but I explain it to people sometimes when I first meet them, and they just cannot wrap their heads around it. And that's okay.
That's another barrier.
But it's a barrier.
That's another barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another barrier when it comes to working online and doing something people are not. I mean, girl, like when I meet people and I'm like, hey, love to be friends with you, and then they go follow me on Instagram and they see me dressed up as Squidward. They're like, dude, I'm never texting this girl back. So I'm like, oh yeah, it sets you.
But you know what? In that case, because you are unapologetically yourself, exactly. They're not for you. And it weeds people out. And that's something that I take a lot of pride in, and just finding that like right boundary of what you do want to share online versus what you do keep closer to you, and like when to show 100%. That vulnerability. But at the same time, I always come back to reminding myself of that. It's just like, this is me and my authentic self, and the people who really want to be a part of that, it's going to be made very clear very quickly.
Exactly. And finding a friend that genuinely supports that and genuinely hypes you up and doesn't, I think the issue I've found into is whether, I just feel like I've ran into the issue where people are very judgmental, or they find it cringe. I hate the word cringy because it's not cringy. Yeah, I hate that word because it's who you are, and you're out here posting yourself. And I hate when people use the word cringy for people just showing up authentically them. I just think it's a reflection of people being like, I wish I could show up that way. For sure. But anyway, I find that to be a really big barrier as well. And finding a friend who really accepts it and really hypes it up and really sees it and finds the power in it and finds it, all the things. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is just showing up as you are, and knowing that your people and your partner and all the things that will come in your life will come into your life that are meant for you 100%, 1,000,000%.
Amen. I couldn't agree with that more. And just to kind of bring this all together and reflect on a lot of the different topics that you've covered, as one final question, I'd love to know, if somebody could only have one takeaway from this conversation, what do you want them to remember? What do you want them to leave with?
No one is you, and that is your power. I say it every day. I say it to our community. I say it to myself. It has been life-changing for me, truly, in a world of constant comparison. And when it comes to going through a toxic relationship, when it comes to the gym, when it comes to every aspect, I feel like we're constantly I should be here. I should be here with my career. I should be here with this relationship. I should look like this exact person. And especially in the verge of, unfortunately, Ozempic and plastic surgery and all these different aspects, it is such a statement that I have to consistently hold on to know that my worth is never tied to a number, my body, or any single aspect. The magic is in here and who I am, and that's going to align with the people coming into my life. So it's been so transformative for me, and that's the biggest thing I always want to send to people, because it's hard not to feel like we're enough in a society that always makes us feel like we aren't. And so I always want to remind people that, because you're deserving of it. You're worth it of that. And I don't want you to live a life where you look back when you're 90 years old and see that you didn't see your worth, and you didn't see that you were deserving of healthy love, not only from friends, but from a partner, from yourself, and living this one experience on earth, eating all the things, doing all the things, and just living your life as authentically you as you could possibly be. I want every single person who follows me to look back at 90 and see that, because I think that could be, I just think that's personally one of my worst nightmares, is when I'm 90 years old looking back and not seeing that. And I want to give that to my kids and anyone else following me. So that's huge for me.
So well said. Well, Katrina, this has been so much fun. I could literally talk to you for hours. So we would
I know,
love,
I could too. We should talk after this.
I know. And we should totally do like a postpartum.
Like after we hang up, let's do like, exactly.
We can be, now that we've established we have a lot of things in common, we can be internet friends too.
Exactly.
And I really, like I said, before we jumped in and into this conversation, I've really loved being able to watch what you've built and will continue to build and what you stand for. And this has been really cool. So thank you so much.
Well, I need to hype you up too, because you are so well spoken. You're an incredible podcast host. Jeez Louise. I've really learned so much from you and how to communicate. Once I get my pregnancy brain off the whatever's going on, I'll get back at it. I'll be as good as you, but no, it's really amazing what you're bringing to your community and just people in general. So yeah.
Well, I acknowledge you for that compliment, and it really means a lot to me. So thank you so much. So yeah, before we let you go, it sounds like there might be a change to the name, but where can everybody get connected with you? Tell us about, downloading your app, all of it. We'll put everything in the show notes so that, especially if anybody who is in their pregnancy stage, it sounds like they have some very good resources at their fingertips through that.
Oh yes, 100%. So my Instagram handle currently is College Clean Eating. I will be changing that to Katrina McKenna, which is what I am on TikTok on there. And then our app is the Sculpt You. Again, we have just amazing. We have week 5 through 41 prenatal programs. We have 6 weeks postpartum, and really want to help you feel empowered and strong in all stages of your pregnancy and life in general. But yeah, that's where you can find us. And if you see me as Squidward, congratulations. I really hope you love it.
That was one of my favorite costumes. If I had to rank a fave though, a very memorable one, I loved your Incredibles one that you did too.
Really? Oh,
yeah, thank you. That was a great one.
Oh, wow. I appreciate that. A lot of people say Twilight, which was definitely something else. I mean,
you were like, you're always full send on them, but the Twilight one, I feel like was a full send for sure.
That was full send. Like I went all off on that one for sure. And Jersey Shore was really fun too, because we just got engaged when we filmed Jersey Shore, and my husband's from New Jersey.
I'm actually really from New Jersey too.
I could feel that from you. Mm-hmm. You are? Where are you from?
I am originally from Westfield, but I'm currently sitting in Long Branch at the Jersey Shore.
No, okay. I just like sense that from you in general. Maybe because I'm married to a Jersey guy, and you can just sense Jersey.
Huge compliment.
I love it. That's amazing. But yeah, so I really appreciate you having me on. So much. It means the world.
Thank you. Well, again, we appreciate you. And for everybody who tuned in today, you guys know what to do. Share this episode, whether it's with somebody who is pregnant, postpartum, is feeling like they're not as connected with themselves, right? I think that's a big message of this entire conversation today, is like, really be clear in figuring out what you want in your life instead of living off of other people's timelines. And if you don't know where to start with that, you got 2 people right here who can hopefully inspire you in some way to make that happen. And from wherever you are listening from, as always, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you.